Well, how many of you were in here this morning to see Ruth Carter's talk on privacy, data privacy, customer privacy? A number of you were. Well, really, I think the next 30 minutes or so, I think I've got some good news for you. It's really not something that's meant to clamp down or penalize companies for doing bad, I don't believe. And over the next 30 minutes, we're going to kind of walk through some slides that will help you see my point of view and maybe give you some confidence on what you can do to be compliant but also more successful in the future. Thank you in advance. My Twitter handle there is @TimHayden. If you would like to, if you're afraid to ask something later and you just want to do it out in public and call me out on something I've said, please do it there. There's my email address. That probably will not be in the deck that is shared with everybody. But if you have a specific question and you just want to send me a message, you can do that as well. And my book that I co-authored with Tom Webster, The Mobile Commerce Revolution, which will lead off with that, is I'm a recovering mobile strategist. For about 10 years, I led mobile strategy for Edelman, for a software company that I led building mobile technology. I was a bit of a junkie, if you will. And really, I think the thing that everybody has to understand is just how fast this is all happening. The proliferation of smartphones and smartphone ownership, really for the past 6 years, 50% of our audience, if you will, has had a production studio in their pocket. They've had a computer in their pocket. And with that, what most brands have failed to realize is that they have a one-to-one direct relationship with their customers, both prospective and the known customer. And more on why that is frustrating to me is because most companies have continued to operate on rented land. Facebook, Google, Amazon, ad networks. They've continued to do everything they can to pay other people to get to their customers when in fact their customers are right there. Email, text messaging, mobile apps, all kinds of direct peer-to-peer ways that you can connect with folks. And the way we told this story in the Mobile Commerce Revolution, it was really trying to realize what the real reality is there. And that is that the world right now, with ubiquity of connectivity, because we're at and above 90% right now in North America in smartphone ownership, this is what it looks like. If you are familiar with these two characters, the gentleman on the left, a postal worker, as all postal workers are, he knows a little bit about everything. Why? Because whoever delivers your mail knows who you pay, what magazines you subscribe to. They have all the information, right? And that's a reality with smartphones. There's no more trivia in bars anymore, right? There's very little arguments and debates in bars the way there used to be because we have all the facts in our pocket. And on the right, you have the epitome of personalization. When this gentleman walks in the bar, everybody says, Norm. They know where he sits. They know what he's drinking. They know that he's pissed off at his boss and he hates his wife. Or maybe it's the other way around. But it is the perfect framing of disposition between the brand, the bar at least in that situation, and the individual. And that's the expectation that our audiences have today. They've been spoiled by Amazon. They've been spoiled by others to know that they have something in their pocket they can go to. It'll know exactly what they want, what they bought last, a little bit more about their location, maybe their velocity, things like that. So at BrainTrust, we are constantly helping our clients look at different, I would say, transformation trends that are happening right now. And a quick run around the wheel here. We look at the globalization of stakeholders and public policy as a major challenge to companies. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today here. The disparate systems and platforms that they have, systems that don't talk to each other, that they need to have talking to each other. What we've already kind of laid out with smartphones, at least, is rapid technology evolution. That is challenging. The fact that we don't type as much as we used to, we use pictures and video and audio now to communicate, that is challenging to companies. The convergence of comms and marketing. Communications professionals and marketing professionals and customer service or customer experience professionals are all paying 3 and 5 times for the same data. And that's a challenge right now. Bots and misinformation. This is not a talk on fake news, but 75% of all the traffic on the internet right now is generated by machines, not people. It's a problem. It's a challenge. And lastly, changing organizational structures. We're not going to talk about all these things today. In fact, I'm going to be very central in terms of what a solution may be to really tackle these in the green boxes. Public policy making, specifically data privacy regulations as they are sprouting up everywhere, disparate systems and platforms, which everybody has. Even if you're a small business, you're probably using as many as 5 to 6 different tools to manage a customer experience. It's a challenge. Rapid technology evolution, convergence of comms and marketing, and ultimately the changing structure you have. As you have machines doing more of your work for you, people change their seat on the bus. Some people lose their jobs. It's just what happens with transformation. It's happened with history already. Some macro trends that are happening right now. Just over the last 2 years, we've had almost a doubling of the number of people that have smart speakers in their homes. Those smart speakers are largely made up of smart speaker brands that come from Google and Amazon. Raise your hand if you have Alexa in your house. Raise your hand if you have Google Home in your house. If you have both. Okay. This conference usually has a bunch of early adopters, well, then you have Siri. If you're using Microsoft, you may have Cortana. You may have a couple of other things in your home. Bixby, if you're a Samsung user. There's a number of different other things that are there. But those two companies dominate most of what's happening on the smart speaker market. Those same two companies have a representative majority of video cameras on people's doors. Now, if that doesn't scare the living shit out of you, that two companies now can listen to everything that is said in 20% of American homes today, and the majority of that audience can see everything that comes to their front door. That's where privacy is on the mantle, if you will. And meanwhile, somebody else is always screwing it up. And this is not a dig on Facebook necessarily, but the news headlines are there every single week. Companies are being fined for violations. They're being fined for data breaches. They're being fined for somehow selling data that they had no right to sell in the first place. This is not going to end anytime soon, and if you thought 2016 was scary, 2020 is going to be double scary in terms of the number of foreign and domestic actors who are doing everything to change our perception and get us to influence the uninfluenced in terms of casting a vote, in terms of different narratives are there. This is not a talk on that. So, a quick refresher on customer data privacy. What's out there today that has the most teeth is what everybody knows with GDPR, the California Consumer Privacy Act, which will kick into gear in January of next year, the Canada Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, which is basically a breach regulation that says that within an hour of data being breached, you have to notify all of your customers or everyone you have information on. The Illinois Personal Information Protection Act, and each state has a different variation on personal information protection, but coming soon we'll have more things that are GDPR-like that'll pop up in other states. I know Nevada is going to kick into gear next month. Maine is on the books to go into force next year. Texas, where I'm from, Texas actually had 2 different bills that were in the legislature this year in 2019. Our legislature only convenes every 2 years, so in 2021 we'll probably pass our own law in Texas as well. The thing to note here is that it's happening everywhere. The things that most of these laws have in common is they require you to be able to honor digital subject access requests. That means when a customer comes to you and says, I want to see everything you have on me, and that means everything you have on them, you have to be able to give that to them. You have to be able to send that to them or have them see it on some type of dashboard or system. The right to erasure This is what started really in Scandinavia about 10, 15 years ago with what they call digital suicide, which was your freedom to be forgotten, your ability to not just unsubscribe from a newsletter, but to hit a button and have a company lose and delete everything they have on you. That is also a part of many of these laws. And then lastly is what I already said about the Canadian legislation that's already in place, and that is breach responses. Is the minute that you've been hacked, the minute that you've had a data breach of any sort, you usually have a certain amount of time that you have to notify all of the folks you have records on that that breach has occurred. And here's the real reason that we're in this jam. We can't blame, we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A in just a second here, Tim. But the bottom line is, in my opening slides, I was pointing the finger at many of the big companies, right? But the problem is that the way we've gone about managing our businesses is that we've oversubscribed to technology. And this has created all of the mess and the issues that we have with privacy and frustration on the part of the customer. And as we've invested in that technology, in parallel, it's not just privacy that's at stake, but we've lost touch with our customers. And we've sent out very transactional messaging, push messaging, emails, and we've said, hello, member, hello, customer, hello, maybe first name, because the marketing automation system reconciles with the CRM fairly well these days. Maybe we get that much right, but we're still sending maybe only 2 or 3 variations of email out to our customer base or our prospective customer base. And we know that's not personalized. There are companies like OneSpot, who is here at the show, that actually can fix that and help you send individualized emails, but there's more to it than just email. So a better illustration of this is, say you have a customer named Cliff. Cliff comes in and he fills out a form on your website. On Twitter, he follows you and he is the Cliffster. He uses a credit card that you have records on, Cliff, and that name is Cliff B. Smith. Google is telling you that Clifford is visiting your website in Google Analytics. There is a Clifford that exists in your CRM for this person, and when he downloaded your mobile app or when he filled out a form on a mobile page or responsive page that could have been within a third-party ad network, he said his name was Cliff. The bottom line is, his name is just Cliff. And most companies, when they operate and manage each of these touch points, they do so in silos. They do so in departments or different business units, and this is where you have the redundancies happen. The direct mail team is sending, I'll call one company out right now. Every Christmas and spring, my wife receives 6 different Title IX catalogs. There's a space in her name here once. They have her maiden name on another. There's an extra, the 4-digit extension on the zip code exists on 3. You can tell. And this is how easy it is to tell. Airlines, same thing. I've bought tickets from Southwest Airlines using one email address, using another email address on the same Rapid Rewards account. And I still get an email to each one. They know, same device. I know they know. They know that I'm just one person, but they haven't cleaned that up. This happens to everybody. The bigger you are, the worse the problem. So we'll talk about the steps to data governance, because it's not just about data privacy. It's about getting your house in order. It's about cleaning up what you already have in terms of customer data and customer information. And to oversimplify it, your opportunity right now, and actually your responsibility, as is dictated by laws that you can or choose not to adhere to and comply with, is to connect and find all the relevant information you have on your customers. The types of devices they use, their Facebook IDs, the other unique identifiers that exist about them through any other pathway that they have come to you. I mentioned payment method before. That's a big one, and it's usually kept way over to the side that marketers don't even get a chance to see that information. it's still customer information related to the individual. Find all of that data and put it in one place, which is the explosive customer data platform market that's out there today. With that, then applying machine learning to transform that data into better segmentation and to understand all the individual attributes that exist across that big sea of touch points that you have. Now, if you are in the Global 2000, you belong to a special group of folks, not just being in the Global 2000, but most of the companies in that group are using as many as 150 different systems to manage customers. So you can imagine what that looks like in terms of bringing all that data from all 150 of those systems into one place. Ultimately, the analysis that is possible today through predictive analytics, behavior modeling, and other analysis on your customers' past behavior and current behavior, what you're able to do with that is make clearer decisions about what to do next. That means something different for everybody. Sometimes it's product development, many times it's content, many times it is just go-to-market campaigns, it could be surveys, it could be a number of other things. But having a true north on your customers allows you to perform much more accurately in what you're doing. The one thing that you'll have to understand is that as these privacy laws go into effect, you're going to lose most of these things on the left. You'll still be able to build lookalike audiences when you execute media buys and you run advertising campaigns, but you're going to lose the ability to target people the way that you have luxuriously over the last 5 years in building custom audiences and being able to associate cookies or pixels with folks that exist in your CRM. Most of that is going to go away sometime over the next 3 to 4 years. What's going to matter is that you have actual unique identifiers for them. And the core of it, and this is where if there's anybody in the room has worked in direct mail in the past, the core of it is the best contact information you can have on a person is not a Facebook ID, but it's their mailing address, their email address, their full phone number, and their full name. Number of ways that you can bounce that off of different systems to find other records as well. And when I talk about a customer data platform, this is an illustration of what you would plug into that. When I say all the data, I mean 100% of the data you have on customers and customer-related information. Putting all of it in that central location, plugging your CRM into that as well, and having each one of these systems or families of systems, because this is not just one system or platform that manages any one of these outer rings, but being able to make sure that if a record exists for a customer in marketing automation, in your payment processing, in what you're doing with third parties, or with the system the folks in the warehouse use for supply chain and logistics, that they've all reconciled with you. They've all reconciled at this central place, the customer data platform. Once you go through this process, we're going to talk a little bit at the end about shopping for a CDP and get a little bit more specific on what a customer data platform is. But the other side of life, once you have cleaned up your data infrastructure, once you have reconciled, or what people call entity resolution, removed all the duplicates, there are all kinds of fantastic things that you can do. Number one, we've already mentioned it, is individualization. The emails that you send, the ads that you buy, are the ads that the person who sees them is the only person who sees them. That is possible today. The ad networks, from a programmatic standpoint, have all been built for about 5 years to deliver on that. Most of us just haven't been able to act on it because we haven't had our data in order from a first-party data standpoint. Even more important is that once you tokenize your customer data, this is what Stripe is doing right now. It was a year ago that Amazon's patent expired on the one-click buy. So there are a number of different payment processors and e-commerce platforms out there that have already moved forward to do this. If any of you bought anything with Stripe on a vendor or on a retailer's website in the past 6 months, probably, you've had that opportunity to say that while you're on the website, and because of your email address or your phone number that you had put in a form, your payment was already stored in Stripe and shared with that company, as long as you can confirm with a two-factor authentication that you're that person. What does that do? It saves you, the customer, minutes of your life from having to dig your credit card out of your pocket and enter 16 digits and find that three-number code on the back, which doesn't matter how many times you put it in, you got to still look at it. You can't remember it, right? This is what's possible. And what's even better about this is we're just around the corner. Within a year, you'll be able to stay in Twitter or Facebook or reading the Wall Street Journal and have an ad come up and be able to buy one click from the ad, never leaving the Wall Street Journal, Twitter, or Facebook. And that's a third-party ad. That's LL Bean. That's Walmart. It's somebody who's making that possible for you. That's all there in the next 12 months. You're going to see it for yourself. It's possible for everybody in the room to do similar. There's the obvious big win here, is that creating customer empathy across an organization. Now that you've taken everybody's data from across different business units and departments and put it into a centralized location, you can start to build resumes. And the first thing, it will change the way you go about social care and customer experience. Because no longer will you just look at the situational needs of someone, you'll look at the dispositional needs of your customer. And when I say a resume, this is very similar to what you would get out of the ARM Treasure Data customer data platform, where you've got hundreds of connections to the CDP and your ability to query. In this situation, Joe Smith calls in and says that his device isn't working or his shoes don't fit, and you look Joe Smith up and you're able to find out everything you need to know about Joe there in the moment. This is huge for larger companies who have a high volume of customer complaints or customer needs, customer recovery events. Because think of the time that's wasted. We know, because we're all frustrated with those situations that we get in when you call the bank, right? And you say, I had a question about a charge on my card, and the person who answers the phone after you've already entered your account number says, hold on, can I get your account number? And then they say, I'm sorry, I understand your situation, I need to transfer you to somebody else. And the next person that picks up the phone says, how can I help you? Can I get your account number? You see where this friction will be removed. Our lives are going to get better, and you have the opportunity to do the same. Not going to go deep into AI and machine learning, but once you have all that data in the same place, the CDP will be doing the work for you. As you query information, as you build lists, as you do audience segmentation, things that you're able to do functionally and utilitarian with a customer data platform, most of those that are on the market today, will have machine learning in them that basically while you're sleeping, it's running its own models. And it is looking at other ways to crunch all the information that's inside it. And why this is important is because whether we choose to or not, we are going to start even more to automate our businesses. And one of the biggest places that we're already doing this is with chatbot technology to help customers when they land on our websites. Most chatbots that are on the market right now, I will not name any names, are fantastic at you training them with FAQs and maybe old records from a call center. Train them on what to say. What we're talking about is true cognitive technology that the bot, as you enter a little bit of information, starts to understand, going back to that resume that I showed a couple slides ago, that you bought something on a certain day, and that was part of a lot of other things that we had problems with. That kind of thing, being able to meet the customer in the moment, and even the machine not truly having empathy, but having some contextual relevance in that moment of need. We talk a lot about future readiness at Braintrust, and that means something different, as I said, for each client and each business unit within each client. For some, it means immersive technologies. Some of our clients are looking at augmented reality. They're looking at virtual reality. Again, if you want to think about true immersion, what needs to happen? It needs to be contextually relevant. So I would say the next iteration, the next 2 years, when we have things like 5G that really start to reach critical mass in the marketplace, we'll see a plausibility to where virtual reality, at least in the home and probably in business to certain degrees, becomes much more plausible than it is today. And with that, it'll also become much more empathetic or personalized. It'll know who you are, not that just you have checked in as so-and-so who is male with this birth date that lives at this address, which is the way most of our initial entry registration into using such technologies is today. Very important is having a true north of insights on your customers speeds up the product development process, but not only does it do that, it allows marketing and communications to be lockstep with product development. And when I say that, especially in a room full of marketers or communicators, they usually look back at me and say, I don't have anything to do with product development. I have everything to do with go-to-market. Well, with the rate of change in the world today, those two need to be very aligned, almost parallel with each other. And the friction, or what you could calculate as missed sales opportunities, that gap will start to close as you start to have that true north of customer behavior and customer needs and preferences. And the pie in the sky thing I have for you is that the reason you want to do this, again, as much for privacy reasons, as much for personalization needs, is that we're only 5 to 6 years away before blockchain becomes a formidable way to transfer value with customers. And with blockchain, the customer can be anonymous. You don't get their email address. You don't get to find out who they are. You may lack the opportunity to even know where they live. In fact, there's a lot of people that are out there that believe in about 10 years with blockchain, companies will pay people to find out who they are. Basically giving them product or paying them an annual fee for the opportunity to have their identity and to know things about them. But the first step in terms of using blockchain, I'm not talking about cryptocurrency here. I'm not talking about Bitcoin. I'm talking about distributed ledgers used in supply chain, logistics, and in commerce. And there are ways that blockchain can come in and help you with data protection as well. That's a different talk for another day. Lastly, if there are communicators in the room, you have this opportunity to be the hero. This is at apple.com. If you have an Apple device, they have sent you emails several times last year when they did their roadshow. Tim Cook went around the world, met with dignitaries, and talked about how serious Apple was about governance of Apple users' data. So you can go to apple.com and you're given these opportunities to temporarily deactivate, to go in and see everything they have on you purportedly. I don't believe they're showing you everything. To correct your data or to delete your account entirely. Now, Amazon, a year ago, allowed everyone to come in and look at all their audio files that Alexa had on them, which for some people got a little scary because Alexa's always listening. What's fascinating is just 2 months ago, Amazon came forward and said, even when you go in and listen and delete what you see, we hold on to it forever. So, just something to think about. But the message here on being a hero is what Tim Cook has done here, what Apple has done in being out of the gate first with GDPR compliance and putting it up out there for the world to see that you can come in and control the information that Apple has on you, he has basically become the man in the white hat. That's Curious George, isn't it? So, the Lone Ranger. And of course, the Lone Ranger does not ride alone. And that's my message about being a hero, is that it's a public relations play to say that you have your house in order, that you're being responsible about the data that you have on the people you serve. That's exactly what Apple started last fall, and they continue to ride that horse, pun intended, today. So, in buying a customer data platform, it is a multi-department decision to make, especially on the enterprise side, and that's what you have in front of you right here. This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Data Management Systems. Many names up there that you probably have recognized or that you are familiar with. The next iteration of this is Gartner starts to get officially into the customer data platform Magic Quadrant and analysis that they want to bring to market. You're going to see this be a different chart. We've had SAP, Adobe, Oracle in the next month is launching Unity, which is their version of a CDP, and they're going to keep coming. So you're going to see that you have options in the marketplace. But as you shop for a CDP, let's talk about a few things you need to look for as marketers. The first thing is asking them, when you're talking to a vendor, about their established API connection portfolio. What history do they have connecting with a stack of technology like your organization has? So this sometimes is a conversation with somebody that ladders up to the CIO or the CTO, maybe a VP of digital strategy, something Ruth said earlier. You know, we're starting to see chief privacy officers, chief data officers. This is a conversation that marketers will have to have in tandem with those kinds of folks, those kinds of titles. But being able to understand what their history is, have they worked with an organization like yours before? Being able to understand that they can handle all the data that you have. And all the data you have today is much bigger than you know it to be. If you have 10 to 20 million people in your CRM, you probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 records associated with those 10 to 20 million people existing throughout the organization. Surveys they filled out. Requests for information. Phone calls they made into a call center. There's information everywhere in the organization. But what's important about this is qualifying your investment in a customer data platform that it can handle what is ongoing. We're in, I would say, the nascent stage right now of an explosion of both IoT and 5G connectivity. What that's going to do is create 5 to 6 times the amount of data needs that you have today. Not only will it be the smartphone, the notebook, the tablet that they have, it'll be the connected home, it'll be the connected car, it'll be connected wearables, bicycles, microwave ovens, all of these things that are going to cause you to urgently have all of your data in order, if not all in the same place. Be sure that you're not just investing in a data warehouse or just a data management system. Make sure that there is a plausible way for when you want to query the information you have on your customers, building lists, doing segmentation, doing other types of behavioral analysis. Make sure that you have the machine also doing some of the work for you. This is incredibly important right now because every single booth that is out there on the expo floor is saying that they have AI to help you with your job. That's not a lie. It's just qualify for them, have them qualify for you exactly what it is that the customer data platform is going to be able to do. And depending on the industry you're in, if you're in financial services, if you're in healthcare, you may be faced with a question on whether or not this is something you can invest in that's in the cloud, or if it can be based on premise, or it's required to be based on premise. I think you're going to see more and more CTOs and CIOs that are going to require things at least to be hybrid managed. So much on premise and so much in the cloud, especially as data is stored at the edge, which you're going to hear people start to talk a lot more of as IoT goes into place. There's going to be information about that your customers share with you that you don't get to keep, but they keep it in their car, on their phone, on their watch, those kinds of things. That's happening today. But it's those kinds of things that you'll have to understand on where, in fact, you need to have this. And lastly is make sure it's marketer friendly. Most of the technologies that you saw in that Gartner Magic Quadrant and the slide before, most of those technologies would have required you to have coders, engineers, to help you run queries on the information that exists within a data lake or the data management system itself. In the last 12 months, everybody has upped their game to create user interfaces that are much more friendly to the marketer, the communicator, or the customer experience professional. And lastly, talk and share with your colleagues. And I've always said this: if you're a digital marketer or a digital communicator, you need to have a cup of coffee with whoever runs direct mail at least once a month. They're probably the most analytically driven people in the entire organization, the direct mail folks, that is, and they've been doing it for a very long time. And have actually had more data on customers than anybody else did for a long time. So what you can do from knowledge sharing without investing in technology is paramount to taking you further in that journey to having a true north and an accurate view of who your customers are. That's the end of my talk, and I think we have probably 7 minutes or so to answer questions. A lot to unpack there.
How will I know not to contact you if I've been forced to delete the data? Like in email, we have a do not email list, but we keep the name of the people so we know not to email them.
Right.
So how does that work if I'm forced to just blow up everything?
That's a good question. And like Ruth said this morning, well, she is an attorney. I'm not an attorney. So that's a legal question, I'm sure. But if you're keeping a record on an individual anywhere, and depending on what state you're in, and I would just say, I think that was one of Ruth's messages today. She didn't say it outright, but let's understand that this is not just a trend. This is the future. Do what you got to do to be compliant, no matter where you are, no matter where your business is or where your customers are. Be compliant to the highest standard if you can. I just think you're going to be required to communicate with anybody in those breach situations, for sure, or any other things that happen from an abuse standpoint. That's the other thing you read a lot about in the headlines, are former employees or employees that are now former employees who were malicious or just irresponsible in the way that they accessed information. Those same breach clauses that are in these regulations is going to dictate how you communicate to customers that kind of activity took place as well. And if you're in communications, I think everybody would say, I'd rather do that to be transparent with my customers than have the New York Times or NBC break the news for everybody. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I know the CDP, or the customer data platform is strictly for customers, but is there one, or would you recommend, HR data, where you could also put that in one place as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have clients right now that are looking at taking just general machine data. They've got things that happen in the warehouse in terms of fulfilling orders, and the machines spit off data specific to customers. That's specific to customers, sure, but whether it's coming from HR, it's coming from transportation management, it's coming from some other node of the business, absolutely the same responsibility and the same opportunity you have to organize that information and to run better analyses on it, better modeling of how the world works. Back there.
Are there resources you could recommend for, say, small nonprofits where we see all this stuff coming at us, and frankly, it terrifies our leadership, but we don't have the budget to invest in consultants and, you know, a lot of the pieces that are up there, it isn't necessarily justified for our scale, but we know we need to take action.
Sure. There is a CDP Institute, a Customer Data Platform Institute. A gentleman by the name of David Raab, R-A-A-B, runs it. He is always sharing information across the spectrum of small businesses, including nonprofits, and there's more news every day, obviously, in the enterprise space, that overpriced, out-of-reach world that you're talking about, right? But from a trend standpoint, that's there. Ruth, this morning, as she was, and I'll quote the attorney now, right? This morning when she was up here, she was quick to say that nonprofits, at least as far as the California Consumer Privacy Act, they're not included. But you are with GDPR, right? So again, you're going to have to be able to pick your battles there. The other one is Epic, epic.org. And epic.org follows everything to do with privacy that's happening in every sector. Because beyond customer data privacy, there's also location data privacy. There's also a lot of the other data you could leverage in terms of framing or modeling customer behavior, but there are specific laws in place all over the world right now. And epic.org does a great job of framing those up for you.